It's really good to talk to you again, Rodney. Obviously we spoke a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago. I can't remember what it was. And we chatted about what did we talk about? Was it about courses or about growth or just what worked for creators after a certain point? What was the main focus of our conversation? Can you remember?
Yeah, so let me take a look here. Because I had a lot of these. I had over 20 of them.
You
So,
did.
but yeah, and so but one of the things we talked about for you, you were talking about like how you are the content.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I had seen you had posted that on notes, and then you had said that in the interview, and I was just like, oh, now I get to really get what he means by that.
Yeah, I get to explain
And
it.
we Yeah, and then one of the things we talked about too was why, when you share your failures, and share the things that didn't work, how that builds more audience loyalty
Hmm.
than if you only share your successes. So
Yep.
those are a couple of things we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I definitely stand by both of those things. I'm still developing the idea of the you're the content thing to try and understand it better myself. I have like a vague understanding of what it should mean, but I want to nail it down to make it more concrete. But I do like that idea of yeah, of like sharing your failures as well as your successes because it makes you not seem more human, but it just nails down your authenticity in a very often inauthentic online space, I think. So I think it's really important to talk about the things we struggle with and that go wrong along the way. But let's start there for both of us. Actually, that's kind of a random segue. But what is something that you have tried, Rodney? I'm going to talk about things you've done that have been successful and that you're doing right now. I've been sort of perusing your Substack and your various other social media channels and things like that before this conversation. But what are some things, or was even like one thing that you've tried in the last maybe few months or the last year that hasn't really worked out for you, but maybe you've learned a lesson from it?
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple things.
Hmm.
Um, Most social media posting, even though I'd get like attention on LinkedIn and start to develop a following there, it didn't really translate to subscribers and not too much, growth in my business as far as selling my ebook is concerned. It did help a little bit with selling coaching, just a tiny bit. But so that's something that didn't work out so well. X.com completely fell apart.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's people still doing well over there, but none of the people that I was connected to are were still posting there. So yeah, it's. I mean, I shouldn't say none of them. Some of them are still there, but it just seems like a different place. So that didn't keep up. It was too bad because that was starting to pay off at some point.
Mm.
So those are two things that haven't worked as well. I haven't been able to grow as much from social media as I'd like. So the thing that finally worked was Substack Notes was actually, and it was only because I started the interviews,
Mm.
and some of them were mentioning that, and I said, well, let me start playing around with this, and sure enough, there they were. Subscribers start subscribing and
Yeah.
and purchasing things. So, so yeah, it you sometimes you just have to kind of try some things before you find something that actually starts to pay off. And it's not a, you know, I mean, I don't think everyone's not going to go viral right away or ever necessarily. One of the people I follow and one of the people I interviewed, Ev Chapman.
Mm.
She's also on Substack, but she's on X and LinkedIn as well. She's grown her audience, thousands of people, thousands of subscribers. She has had zero viral posts the entire
Mm.
time. Just
Yeah.
steady brick by brick building.
Yeah. Best way to do it.
Yeah, so you can do it, grow without it if you can just be that steady. So um I wouldn't say I had been anywhere near as consistent as her though. So, uh, but but yeah, so those are some things that didn't work. It's just the LinkedIn and the X growing there has not paid off.
Yeah. It's the same for me. I mean, I've got like 20,000 plus followers on X and it's pretty much useless at this point. And same for what you said. Substack Notes has definitely been the real game changer for me in terms of growth. Like I don't think I would have the email list or the following that I have if it wasn't for that. So very thankful for Substack. And before we go on, Rodney, actually, just can we kind of circle back to what I should have asked you at the start to just kind of like introduce yourself a little bit. So,
Oh yeah.
obviously we've spoken before, and it's just it's too organized today, clearly. We've spoken before and things like that. But just in case anyone doesn't know who you are, could you just quickly tell us about a wee bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got to this point now?
Yeah, I live in Southern California. I'm about 6 miles from Disneyland.
Mm, nice.
So that's like geographically where I'm at. In a little town called Fullerton. Um, I used to be a public school teacher, so I was trained as a public school teacher back in the 90s and started my first my first school teacher job back then.
Mm,
I left teaching public school. I had met someone who, I was looking for things to help me improve my life, and I had uh, found that this coaching method was really effective, and I ended up getting trained in it. And then the people that were leading that company, I ended up joining them and helping them grow their business.
mm,
So I left teaching to help grow that company.
mm,
Um, and then during that process, I ended up, the founder of that company asked me, hey, could you help us create workshops? They had workshops, but they weren't as effective as they wanted. And I said, sure. So I helped redesign their workshops from the ground up,
mm,
and we got great feedback. And then at some point he said, boy, that sure is expensive having people fly down. We'd have people from all over the world fly down to these workshops. Let's make it online. I said, sure, I guess we can do that. The online workshops I didn't think were that great, but I ended up redesigning them again a few years later. Now we finally had something. And so that's just a little bit of that. And eventually I said, well, this is great. I want to teach this to more people. How do you create online training that really works, and online courses and information that really makes a difference? And so that's what I've been doing. I've been helping people do that. One of my first clients was a physical therapist,
mm,
and he was a professor of physical therapy, and he was trying to teach his specific approach. His physical therapy is physical therapy, but he works with a lot of chronic pain patients, and they don't, a lot of times they don't follow through on their exercises because they hurt.
mm,
So they have to be really bought into it to do it, because you have to do them long enough to see improvement. And he figured out a way that's basically coaching them through to actually get buy-in,
mm,
get complete buy-in to it. And then they would do it. Not only would they do it, they would be like chomping at the bit, ready to go. Like, give me some, like, you should give me exercises. Like, that's how good his process is. He tried teaching that to people, and he thought that they understood it. He thought his students understood. He's teaching, teaching at this university, and then he'd go watch them, and he's just like, no. And of course, they weren't getting the same results, right?
mm,
So I helped him design an online program. And this is during COVID, so there really wasn't the option to get all of these people in a room together anyway.
mm,
So they were all totally fine just doing everything online, which you don't usually do with teaching physical therapy. And anyhow, we created the first program, we created the second program, and then we got a big health maintenance organization called Kaiser Permanente in California, and they said that this looks really intriguing. Let's pilot it. So he piloted it with them, and they actually measure everything over there. So they measured what happened when physical therapists went through their program
mm,
versus not through my client's program versus not, and the difference was
mm,
and they have these scores they call the MAP scores. I don't remember what the letters mean anymore right now, but that was the first intervention they'd found that finally improved them. They'd been trying so many things,
mm.
and one of the things has to do with patient satisfaction. So the patients were happy because they were getting better,
Yeah.
and they were happy with the relationship with their physical therapist also, because his process also makes them have a much stronger relationship, because usually you don't have much of a relationship with your physical therapist. They're kind of like telling you here are the things to do, and they're just another medical person, but this one creates a much stronger bond, so they were much happier. So that's what I do, and that's what my goal is. I help people. If you have a hard skill you're trying to teach. That's when my expertise comes into place. All right, it's really hard. The failure rate is really high. Let's go.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. That's great. It's really exciting actually. And I think actually from your, what did you say on your LinkedIn page whenever I was scoping through it, you describe yourself as the course architect, which
yeah,
is a really cool way of describing it. And you said I help experts with an audience create courses that leave a legacy, which is a really nice way of putting it.
yes,
You also mentioned, I think, on your about page on Substack, you said you've created around 17 courses at last check,
yeah.
including multiple editions where you completely rebuilt courses from the ground up. How long does it take you, Rodney, to create a course from start to finish, would you say, on
Oh
average?
boy. It really depends. So if we're going micro courses, that could be literally a couple of days or a couple of weeks. If it's a really small micro course, we're talking about something that takes an hour. But the kind of courses that really go deep in developing these skills, those courses take, like, just first, let's look at the student's perspective. The student going through that, that's like 2 months.
Hmm,
And that's exercises that they would do like 5 days a week, getting feedback from an instructor as well as from their group of students.
hmm,
So they're very involved. That can take several months to put
hmm.
something like that together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite involved. It's creating the content and then creating the exercises to do that. Yeah, so it can take a few months to put something like that together. This was all before everyone had AI helping them do stuff.
Hmm,
I haven't, I'm not, we can do it a little bit faster with the content creation side. The exercise is still just, I haven't figured out how to get AI to help with that. I
hmm,
have got AI to help a little bit with putting together some of the content now, so we can do it a little bit faster. But here's what ends up happening, so I'll just let everyone know. When you have AI help you on the project, anything that AI can help you do, it makes it more efficient. But what ends up happening is you just end up pushing the project further. So no, we don't end up actually doing it any faster because we end up thinking more deeply. Because the way that I use AI, um, we don't use it to, like, let's create the content. Obviously, how does it know what the content is? You could feed it all sorts of stuff and it'll spit out things, but then it doesn't sound like the person,
hmm,
right? You could train it to do all that. That is true. You can get it to do all that. But what ends up the thing that's really useful about it is you get it to ask you questions
hmm.
and you get it to pick apart the thing that you've done. What's
Yeah.
missing here? What might somebody not understand? That kind of stuff. That's where it's really awesome because unlike a human, it'll never to get tired. It will never pull its punches. I mean, it will pull its punches, but you can give it prompts to tell it to not do that. It'll always couch it in the nicest way, right? But you can actually tell it. Plus, you can get more than one AI to look at it, which we do. So you can actually find improvements you would miss. Now, usually there's a lot that I do because I'm not the expert. So if I don't understand it, and I say, if your audience is beginners, great, because there I am, a beginner. So I can tell you it doesn't fly, or it's hard to understand, or I tried the exercise and I couldn't do it. Here's the obstacles that got in the way.
Hmm,
But if you ask it to look for stuff wrong, it's surprisingly good at finding that kind of thing.
hmm,
Um, so and so it can, but it doesn't end up speeding us up that much, but it does end up improving quality. We use it a lot for what's the word? Copy editing.
hmm,
Um, there's things that we do creatively that were really hard to teach, um, such as one of my strategies is disconnected stories that you use to start lessons, and
hmm,
it always gets people really interested. That's the really hardest thing to teach, so I usually just say, yes, I do that. Don't bother doing it. Here's some easier strategies to hook people at the beginning of each lesson.
hmm,
But that's the beautiful thing with AI is you give it a bunch of examples of that and then give it the disconnected story and say connect it. And then, instead of taking weeks to learn how to do that, the AI does learn that literally in minutes.
hmm. It's
So there's some
incredible.
really creative strategies you can use. It does help with that kind of stuff. But again, you're not speeding it up too much, but you are doing things that were too hard, that were not
Hmm,
say too hard, but yeah, they were too hard. They were really hard to teach somebody. And you can teach it to do that element.
yeah,
The other thing, summaries. If you're trying to make any kind of summaries or quizzes,
yeah.
That it does speed up.
I
Very,
find
I
that
mean,
too.
it's good, really good at making it, and then you get to make more creative types of quizzes. That's the thing, you can push the envelope. And
Mm.
and so yeah, so I would say it helps with that. I haven't seen a really big increase in speed, but I've definitely seen a pushing of the envelope more on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that too. I definitely use AI for summaries. For instance, after this podcast episode, I will put the transcript into an AI and get it to give me a summary of what we talked about, which is great because it's able to pick out the things that we mentioned more succinctly than I could do just by reading back through it. Are you getting blinded, by the way, with the sunlight right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, "Oh man, I'm seeing that." And then I just looked at as I'm not usually looking at myself that much, and then I see it. I'm like, "Oh, I've got like two-tone here." I'm like,
Yeah.
here I'm in the shade
I can sort of
because
see you
the
moving further and
sunlight. And
further
I'm
back.
like, "Let me see if I can get a better angle here."
Yeah, for anyone who's listening, there's like a sunbeam directly going across Rodney's face right into his eyes, so he's trying to get out of that right now. Um,
So is this going to be audio? Because the funny thing is anybody who ever wonders, is this AI generated? Clearly not, because
it's
we
clearly
wouldn't.
not. Yeah, this would not happen in an AI world. Yeah, no, it's yeah, I like that about these conversations too, because we make mistakes throughout the course of it, and we sort of miss things out, and then sunbeams get in our eyes as well. So yeah, it's all good. It's all very real and authentic, isn't it? Um, Rodney, go back to what you said previously about the disconnected stories in terms of how you use those. So first of all, what is a disconnected story for anyone who's listening isn't sure about that, and then how do you use that to like within content or within the course? How does it work in terms of how you connect everything up?
Yeah, so a disconnected story is basically a story that has nothing to do with the actual content that you're teaching in that lesson. And you can roll it out so it's really interesting, got a good first line and whatnot. And then at the end, you connect it, and people are like, "Ooh, that's so cool. That's such a great analogy,"
Mm.
right? And it's totally, you're making up the connection. Your brain has the ability to make this up, but if you do it really smoothly, people just like, they're just like in awe, like, "How'd you do that?" I learned that from Sean D'Souza, and I just loved reading his articles, and it's a way to make it, it just people do tell me routinely, "Oh, I love that part,"
Mm.
so I'll give you an example. Like in my atomic course blueprint, the introduction is a whole disconnected story, and I talk about one of the most famous ads in America, which is this ad from Lay's potato chip that says, "Bet you can't eat just one," right? And I don't remember the whole thing right now. It's been a while since I reread that, but the whole point is the a potato chip is super thin, and that's why you can't eat just one.
Mm.
Because you eat it, it's crispy, it has a lot of flavor and just a little punch. And try eating just one. What will happen is you enjoy it, and then a little bit later, you're like, if there's a bag of chips there, you're probably going to get another one, right?
Yeah.
And the whole idea is when you create an atomic course, you want to create a thin slice of value just like that, so that when they're finished, they're not full.
Mm.
Just like when you eat a potato chip, you're not full. You enjoyed it, it was crispy, it was good, but you're not full.
Yeah.
And you can't eat just one. So what will happen is they'll want another one from you, but they'll also have the energy to apply it, what you just taught them, and then they're like, "Oh," and this is literally what one of my clients said. He said, "What else you got?" Because he's like, "I'm still charged up." But usually when you have these really big courses, people are like full of the course. They're like, "Oh man, that was so much. I have all this. I don't know what am I gonna do here?" And then if you say, "Oh yeah, you're gonna probably have to go through it again so that you can really absorb it," and they're like, "Oh, what?" But when your course takes less than an hour, they're like, "Yeah, I could do that again," especially if it's nice and crispy and actually it was an enjoyable experience. Then they're like, "All right, I could, yeah, of course."
Mm.
And that's exactly what happened. The first day I sold it, one of my clients wrote back to me and said, at first I was like, "What? It's done?" Like she's like, "It was like 40 minutes." And then she's like, "But actually, I have all this energy now, all this time to actually start applying it." So she immediately outlined an atomic course, a mini course that very same day,
Mm.
because all that energy was left over. That she was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna really hunker down and do this." Oh, never mind. It's not that hard.
Yeah. That's a great
And
analogy. Yeah.
yeah, so that's the thing is that analogy was just made up. I was just like, what's something that's similar to a small course. Oh, potato chips. And then I said, okay, I could talk about potato chips. But then I thought, oh, this advertisement was really funny, and I can't remember how the ad rolled out because I actually quoted some of the ad. Uh, oh, I remember now. It was the a man and the devil.
Mm.
And the devil was the one betting him, I bet you can eat just one, something
Oh, right,
like that.
okay.
Yeah, and it's I can't remember the exact details, but if you read someone reads it, they'll it's kind of funny. People like laugh because it's an old-fashioned ad and you can watch it on YouTube.
Mm.
Um, and it's still kind of funny, even though as you can see the production quality and you can see the way it's laid out. Nobody would do a commercial like that today.
Mm.
Uh, but so it's just like the camera's straight on the people, and never no any other angles. But it's just kind of a funny thing. And so anyway, you bring up stuff like that. I've brought up things like little scientific facts before.
Mm.
One of the lessons, not in this course, but or actually this was in an article. I can't remember what article it's connected to, but I ended up talking about speed and about something called the is it called the mantis shrimp? I don't know. There's this little animal that's got the fastest punch in all of nature, and it's so fast that it's on the water. When you watch it, you're like, "Oh, where'd those bubbles come from?" Because it like punches something, and you'll see it like in nature documentaries. It'll punch through like the shell of some shellfish, right? And it'll crack that thing open. This
Mm.
little mantis shrimp, and you see these bubbles. Like, where'd the bubbles come from? The bubbles are it punches so fast that it turned the water into steam,
Wow,
and it's punching like 200 something miles an hour.
that's nuts.
And then you see videos of people who have these things in aquariums.
Mm.
And usually they're fine, but every once in a while they get mad at the aquarium and they start punching the aquarium and you see cracks forming.
Wow.
Now, you never have anything in an aquarium that can actually
Punch its way
break the
out.
glass. Yeah, but it just goes. But the thing is, luckily, it's not that heavy. So when it hits the glass, something that doesn't move, it like pushes itself back, but it
Mm.
still cracked the glass. And you're
Wow.
just like, oh, and he's like, I got to get it out of there. And then the guy tries to pick it up and he gets punched in his head. He's got this welt, and it's like, whoa,
Wow.
that thing is, it can't really kill you, but it can sure
It can
cause
hurt you.
pain. Yeah, anyway, so I related that to something. I can't remember what I related that one to, but it was just you bring up these funny facts or these interesting facts that people don't know. You can't, don't bring up stuff like make analogies to driving and stuff. Everyone's already done that to like
Mm.
how, you learned something and it becomes second nature, like driving or something like that, or walking becomes second nature. People have talked about that. So always bring up something completely different.
Mm.
And those are just some examples. I try to bring in like unique facts, like there's some interesting fact, or like how the Mongols defeated the Chinese. And there's an essay that talks about all these different things. But the interesting fact was part of it was milk. Now you're like,
Okay.
ooh, what? How did milk have anything to do with it?
Tell me, Rodney.
Chinese Chinese are more likely to be intolerant.
Oh.
Mongols are 100% lactose tolerant, have a huge milk culture in their culture, like
Mm.
just milk and milk products that I've never even heard of, right? And so why does that help? Because they would have all these horses, because they're horsemen, they're nomads, and they had food with them everywhere they went because they had mares. They
Oh,
had
okay.
them female horses with them. So they never were out of food.
Oh, that's
And
clever.
this was an advantage on the battlefield because it's easier to supply your army when literally the food is part of what's carrying you to the to the battle. And these Mongolians, they would typically have three or four horses. But there was a whole bunch of things in there, like the size of their horses is smaller, which was an advantage as well because they need less food. But there was so many things, but the milk was interesting.
Mm.
That was something that like nobody's talked about milk helping with
Yeah.
win battles.
Yeah.
And so then you find that one interesting fact, that one unusual fact, that one thing and then people go, "Oh, that's cool. That's interesting. Let's hear about that." You lay that out a little bit and then you connect it to your topic.
Mm.
And then people are like, "That was cool." And
Yeah.
you pepper those things at the beginning of each lesson and it kind of gives people a little bit of energy
Mm.
you know, just getting that little thing, or sometimes just even a little statistic that they haven't heard of, and then connecting it, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool." And so it just makes people have a positive impression of your course, and then they just keep wanting to come back.
Hmm.
which is like potato chips.
Yeah.
It's just,
Which I'm
and
definitely
we're
gonna eat
talking
some of after this.
exactly, and we're talking like a few lines, like we'll compress it to a really small amount of text. So there, or if it's a video, just a really small amount of time. But sometimes people are like, "Oh yeah, I could get more of those." I I once went to a training where I delivered some of these, and they're like, "Oh, do you have more stories like that?" And I was like, "Oh, these are only ones I prepared that I was telling you guys, but I could get some more later." I could find somewhere. I could go to my blog and just read some random ones. But
Nice.
yeah,
I love that though because like pe people remember stories, don't they? Like if you just give people dry facts, they'll take it in at the time, and then as soon as they leave or they move on to the next thing, they'll just forget about it. But you remember stories; they embed themselves in your brain. I know
right.
that you do that. I get other emails from other writers who basically just do the same thing. They share a story and then they cycle it into like a learning outcome kind of thing throughout the course of the email, and it's so clever because. You get drawn in by the hook at the start, like if it's about Mongolian milk, for instance, and then by the end, like you're gonna go away with that little factoid, but then you're able to connect it with what the outcome was in the course of the content, which is so clever. Um, and I think anyone who's listening to this, like, it's definitely something you could try on Substack and in your email copy and even in your notes potentially on Substack as well. Like share those kind of stories and find ways to connect them. Do you, Rodney, whenever you hear one of these stories, do you automatically make the connection in your brain and that's why you choose that story, or do you have to kind of like find a way to draw a connection out of it if you think the story's interesting?
Yeah, you have to find it. You have to make it because it's the part of what is brilliant, or part of what people love about it is the connection's not obvious, and it's not obvious because it literally had to be invented.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, there's some that are really, after you explain it, it seems like it's so obvious, the connection, but it's really not. It was invented. And I learned this from a teacher named Sean D'Souza,
Mm,
who's online. And I'll tell you the basic idea of it, which is, and once you see it, you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know this is how people do it. Um, you have to boil your idea, not the story idea, but the article or the lesson to one word
mm,
or maybe two words, right? And then you connect it, then that's you figure out a way to connect it to that idea.
okay.
And that's what allows you to make a disconnected story connected.
Mm,
And of course, it's hard to fully explain it without looking at it. And that is one of the just show AI a bunch of examples that can do it.
mm,
Because teaching it was been really challenged. Sean D'Souza, he had just taught a course where he taught this to a bunch of people, and he's like, I think I finally got the most efficient way to teach it, the best way to teach it just now, and he's going to send me some stuff. But I was like, oh well, that's great. But I've helping. That's one thing I've helped AI help do is actually do that
mm,
because that was actually challenging. So I used to tell the people, don't worry about that part. Just we'll use other stuff that's more straightforward, but the AI now can help with that if you give it good examples of that. And I'll
mm,
just if anybody wants to know another a source of these, besides Sean D'Souza, he's got a book called The Brain Audit. Look at it, you'll see bunches of examples of that. But The Psychology of Money
mm,
actually has lots of examples of that. And I was like, wow, that is so cool because I didn't know anybody else like who was really a professional writer writing like best-selling books actually using that technique consistently.
mm,
And he does. Most of them use more stories, even if they use interesting stories, they find a story that's already really related and then talk about how it relates. But he was really good at having these more analogy type stories. And I was like, wow,
mm,
that was something, you
yeah.
know. So anyhow, there's sources of that. And then I don't use it all the time because I use multiple strategies. Sometimes I just use straightforward like questions. Sometimes I use stories. So if you look in mine, if people want, if they say, hey, give me some examples of it, I can find out of, my last 10 blog posts, which ones I used that strategy and which ones I didn't.
Mm,
But yeah, find the one word.
mm,
So that you have to be able to sum it up to one word or one term, and then that's how then you connect the story to that, and
mm,
you can creatively connect it and it won't immediately occur to you. That's the part that makes it so cool, is when you verbally figure out the connection and then the audience reads it and goes, dude, I would have never thought of that. Yep, that's right, you wouldn't, because I mean, they would have if they really thought long and hard enough, but you're
yeah.
going to do that long hard thinking for them. And then when you want to create it, you have to put it aside and come back because then you're going to read it and go, oh, wow, I thought I had made the connection clear, but it's clearly not. Or
Mm,
show it to other people. They're going to be like, what are you doing here?
mm,
And then refine it and look at other examples of it. And then you're going to go, oh, I need to do it this way to make it work.
mm,
There's even a phrase you can use. You can say, you told the story, you've laid out the story, and you can say, um, you kind of connect the idea and you say similarly with, blankety blank.
mm.
Um, that's kind of a verbal connection, but oh, I wish I had thought we were going to talk about that. I would have thought more clearly about how I can like explain this idea. But anybody who's listening, send me an email or send me a message on Substack, and I'll figure out something for people. If enough people say, "Oh, tell me more about this," I'll create something to lay out the idea a bit better. Because see, here's the thing, and you have to know this about any good teaching. Anyone who's a really good teacher does not instantly know the best way to explain whatever they're teaching.
Mhm.
They try to teach people and you fail at it. And then if you fail at it, you're a teacher and you're like determined that they're going to learn it. You
Yeah.
never think, oh, they're hopeless. You're like, no, no. If they want to know, I'm here. I'm going to make it happen. So then if people were saying, yes, tell me, I will then figure it out until I figure it out, until I crack that nut.
Yeah.
So, if anybody really wants to know, just know that if you're having a hard time understanding it, I totally get it, and I blame myself. So don't take it on yourself if you're just not. If you think, oh, that idea sounds cool, but I can't do it. Yes, you probably aren't because I've not really broken it down really well. Uh, because I would have to dedicate some time to actually think about how to do that, and it's been like a couple of years since I actually tried teaching it because AI just made it easy to do, but easy to do with easy to give to students and say, okay, here's how I can get the AI to help you do it. But
Mm.
some people may want to do it themselves because it is like a superpower.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I just want to say that because I don't ever want people walking away blaming themselves if they don't learn something. I always say blame the teacher. I know it sounds bad because everyone's like, take it on, be personal responsibility, but it's really hard to be responsible for learning a thing that's hard to learn if nobody's figured out a good way to teach it
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
you because you're not the expert at the thing. So you're doing a really hard thing while trying to break it down for yourself. And there are a small percentage of people who are just really good at that or just so persistent. But a lot of people, we just don't have the time and the bandwidth to actually dedicate ourselves to breaking down some skill that nobody's done
Yeah.
for us. So the best thing is find a really good teacher at whatever it is
Yeah, I will.
and
I'll
pay
make
them.
sure people can connect with you after this in the show notes. They can send you a direct message
Yeah,
or an email. Any way you want to connect with them, they can do that. Because I think Rodney, just from talking to you, you're definitely the kind of person who can walk people through your process. Obviously, you're a trained teacher, so you know how to do it, and that's what your background is. And it's clear talking to you that you're passionate about helping other people and helping them get to that point. So, if you're listening to this and anyone and you're interested in what Rodney's been talking about, then definitely reach out to him. Is that okay to invite people to do that? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yes, definitely.
Yeah, he's definitely here to help. And yeah, I mean, I don't think we've actually even talked about what we were going to talk about in this conversation so much because it's gone off on a
Right.
different tangent, but it's great. Like, it's really, really good. And this is all fascinating, really useful stuff people can take from this today. But I do want to mention a couple of things. So first is your course. The Atomic Course Blueprint. You've mentioned it already, obviously, but can you tell us a little bit more about who that course will be for? So is it just for people who want to create their own courses? And if it is for that kind of person, do you think that every writer and creator out there right now should create a course? Is that something people should think to do at some point in future, to go alongside their content in their Substack publication or their newsletter? Is a course a must have in 2025?
So that's a good question. So it all depends on where you are in your business. Are you in your business where you're looking for another source of income or even the first source of income?
Mm,
So if you have a paid publication, that's one source of income. But another one is a course. And the thing that's good about a course is it can be something you sell on its own. And if you're a newsletter owner, it can be a thing that, hey, paid subscribers get this.
mm,
And if you create multiple of them that can be paid subscribers, if you paid for a year subscription, you get all these things,
mm,
right? And they're high value things. the thing is, the thing about value is people say, oh, you get this bonus, that bonus, and they're not even selling the bonus separately, right? But if it's good enough to sell on its own, then it's really valuable because you were willing to put yourself behind it as an actual paid thing. So if you're going to sell your course for 15, 20, 30, 40, $50, and if a year subscription is $50 and you have multiple of these, then it's a really great value because they could just buy them separately if they don't want to subscribe, or they can buy that way, buy through the subscription. So I think that's a way to get more paid subscribers is to have stuff like that.
Mm,
And then that means every time you plug your own course, and then you're going to mention, by the way, paid subscribers get this. It's a really great way to get people to subscribe, and I've seen people do that on Substack and have it work.
mm,
So I think that's a great way to go. Is it's a great way to get people as paid subscribers, and then every time you create one, again, remember you're not talking about a huge amount of time, but it's a lot of value.
mm,
So so if you're already paid subscriptions, I think it's a great way to get more paid subscribers. If you're an expertise that if you're an expert, you have expertise that you know has value, you know that you have problems you can help your audience solve, you should really create a program that helps do that.
mm,
And just make one small problem. You're not going to solve it in the world. I just saw somebody launch something and I asked him, he's like, hey, could you help me? And I said, sure. I said, what do you got? And his program had three different things that it did. And I said, you should make three different programs,
mm,
actually. Just break it into three because it's really hard to have that opening salvo on your sales page that really hits home at a problem because when it's three different problems.
yeah,
Like, oh, this is how to, one of the problems he had was like psychological. How do you get past like the fears and things like that? I said, that by itself is a really good course. You have a way to get people who are afraid to take the next step and you have a solution to that. Just sell that by itself. But it's like buried in three, and other things. As I said, you really got to hit that. And then something about audience building and something about, increasing conversion and sales. I'm like, no, those are separate things. Even within those things, I would always sub niche, and I don't even like the word sub niche because niche people is usually like what audience and making the audience smaller. But
mm,
it's really the problem that people are buying. They're not buying that I'm a member of this audience. They're buying a problem. The
mm,
problem of I'm afraid to take action and move the next step. That that's the if you go for a problem, that's so much more engaging
mm,
than saying I'm just going to help this audience. Now you can still target that audience, but with that problem, you now have a really good message.
mm,
So I help, coaches who, if someone says I help coaches and consultants who hate prospecting there and they're actually afraid of prospecting. I help them overcome that fear and do that all that prospecting they need to grow their business.
mm,
Oh, that's really cool. Somebody out there who has that problem is thinking maybe this guy can help me because he made such a specific promise.
mm,
And so as you have a solution to that, then there you go. If it's, oh, I help people who have websites where they get a ton of visitors, but hardly any of them buys. And I show how to get their conversions up to 30%. Ooh, that's really cool,
mm,
right? You say just the thing that you want to get is what's the starting point and the end point.
yeah,
I hate when they say I'll help everybody in the world get increase their conversion rate 30%. No, I'm sorry, because somebody has a conversion rate, and I've literally seen this with people who have very low traffic businesses with a conversion rate of 50%. You're not getting that guy's conversion rate 30% higher. I mean, maybe you could, but it's probably not for him.
yeah,
It's most likely for somebody whose conversion rate is lower. So give the starting point, give an idea of what kind of endpoint. There was another guy who helped businesses. I can't remember the exact size. He would find $30,000 of savings in them. Well, that's a
wow,
really specific number. Clearly, there's certain businesses you can do that with, and certain you can't. And he was super specific. It has to be in this, this industry, and it has to be they have to have this type of annual revenue, and blah blah blah. And then he could help them. Well, that's just so specific because he knows that his system really only works
mm,
for those things that he knows.
yeah,
And so that's when you specify your audience. But people are like just being told, always specify your audience. I say, no, only if your solution only works for that group, or you
mm,
only have experience for that group, and that's all your testimonials and all your successes, then of course it makes sense to say that. And then you can still branch out a little bit more later. But really get your problem nailed down. Um,
yeah,
that's one of the things I talk about from what I call necessity logic in your marketing.
mm,
Why does it a necessity? Problems are a necessity to solve. If your house has termites, Do you say, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to handle that. I don't know, maybe." Right? No, you say, no, I'm definitely, it's super inconvenient to get rid of termites, right? You have to leave your house. You have to get your house tented. You have to live somewhere else, right? Why would you go through that? Because it's necessary. Because if you let that go on, it's going to ruin the integrity of your house. You are going to do something.
Mm.
My friend gives an example, my friend Sean gives an example of if you're out with your friends and you step in something gooey and brown and smelly, are you going to be like, I'll just keep walking along. It's fine, right? No, you immediately say, I got to get this stuff off my shoe, right? Because it's a necessity. You don't want that stuff. You don't want to drag it around with you with your friends, even if they don't notice. You're just really grossed out by it. So that's why you want to tackle a problem,
Yep.
and then it becomes a necessity. If it's so, even if it's something that provides a benefit, what problem does it solve? For somebody, that benefit solves a problem. Oh, I know a way to get traffic to your website that doesn't depend on social media. That's really cool. That doesn't depend on social media is a problem that you can dig into,
Mm.
because there's somebody out there who says, I hate social media and I
Yeah.
still want to grow my business. Or I've been on social media and it's done zero for me and I still want to. Now we're talking problems, right? And we can dig into that and then say, look, this solution doesn't involve that. Oh, now that makes
Mm.
somebody really curious. Even people who use social media, some of them would be like, I'd like to get off that treadmill actually, because I have to constantly produce content. Maybe this would free me from that. So
Mm.
try to connect it to problems. And the great thing is you can test it, especially if you're talking to people live. And I used to always have to do stuff on the phone, but now that we have Zoom, you can say, hey, people always say, ask people what problem it solves, and yeah, you can do that. But if you make a guess, you say, hey, here's what my product does. What do you think? And you look at their eyes, and if they go, oh, like you did a moment ago, then boom, that nonverbal signal. So don't just keep, writing down your notes and looking down. Make sure you look up, because that, and I'd say, oh, your eyes lit up when I said that. What was that? What intrigued you there?
Mm.
And then they'll tell you, they'll say, here's why I hate blankety blank. If
Mm.
they say I hate, I'm tired of, I don't like, I wish, those are really good
Strong
signals
emotive words. Yeah.
that you have found something.
Mm.
Or if they just start talking a lot,
Mm.
that's the other thing. If they just can't stop talking about something after you've mentioned something, take what they said, of course. Now we have the ability to transcribe it, which is beautiful. Take what they said, but also take note of that energy level,
Mm.
because you didn't just hit a nice to have, you hit a necessity at that point.
Yep.
And so interviewing people, I found is super useful. I know people don't want to do it that much for a lot of reasons. One is they're just worried about it, and two is it does take time. Like I'll spend at least 10 to 15 minutes on an interview. But sometimes if I get somebody who's just really attached to the issue, it may take longer. It may be hard to get them off, but then that's good, because that usually means that they're really into it, and they really want that solution. And so they didn't even care how long they were talking to you, because now somebody's finally listening to me and hearing me out about this. So anyhow,
Mm.
I'm all I feel like I'm all over the place
No,
right
it's
now,
good.
but
It's all good stuff. That's why I'm not saying much because I'm just happy for you to tell me this stuff. It's really, really good. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm a big believer, or becoming a bigger believer in courses and trying to solve those specific problems. And anyone I'm speaking to who creates mini courses or those really specific problem busters, they're big proponents of it and they think it's great. And it definitely is a game changer, I think, in terms of adding that income stream to your overall system that you have. And something just as we sort of come towards the end of this conversation, Ronnie, that I want to mention is your profitable playbooks
yes.
ebook that you brought out, which I'm very grateful to be a small part of as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and who that's for, and where people can get it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I was so glad that you were able to be a contributor to it. It's interview. So the way to describe it in the feature sense, which is not the best way to describe anything, is it's a collection of interviews with over 20 successful creators who've been successfully using their words and using their words to create wealth, right? That's the feature way to describe it. But the problem way to describe it is this. I took all those interviews, put them into five categories, which are five areas of your business
Mm.
that you can focus on. And people tell you, oh, you should focus on your business. Yes, that's correct. What should I focus on, right? Well, you can actually look at those five areas and say, where do I most need help? And then find the interviews that talk about that topic.
mm,
and then find within there one strategy that you think would really help you, and
yeah.
then dial in on that strategy. So don't do everything. There's no reason to read this book cover to cover. If you don't need help with, some people talk about monetization, for example. If you don't need help there, you're like, now I'm doing that good, but what I really need is to focus on growing my audience. Well, then read the ones about growing your audience.
Mm,
All right. Or you're like, I just feel like I'm not connecting with my audience. Well, like David's interview is more about the connection. So, and there's a bunch of others that talk about that. So then read those. No need to read it cover to cover. Don't take it as a duty to read them all. You can, when you look at the categories, you're probably going to say, "Oh, I know I need help here," and then focus on those and resist the urge to go through them all. If you just have a lot of time, you can, but I like to conserve energy. Plus, it's so good when you finish something and you're like, I can't wait to get through some more of that. Good. Reward yourself. You can reward yourself to read the rest by applying what you've got in there. Achieve that a kind of a level of growth in that one domain where you're saying it's time for me to focus on something else, then you get to reward yourself by going through the others. Is what I would say. But you don't need to go through everything. I part of me would love you to because I enjoyed every single one of those. But if you do, if you can't resist the urge, go through it cover to cover, but then really narrow in on the ones that make the most difference for you. So that's what I would say. But it solves that problem of how do I, even if I find the area, do I find the right techniques? Well, the techniques are in there, the
mm,
techniques that are going to help you in that domain. And some of them are really cool. Like I had, I'll give you an example. Russell Nohelty had talked about Kickstarter,
mm,
and I hadn't had anyone tell me anything about Kickstarter in years. I had no idea it was still like doing amazing. And it was a great monetization strategy, but also a great testing strategy.
mm,
And I hadn't thought about, oh, you can test market ideas on Kickstarter. And he has a whole approach laid out and it's in the interview. So that's just one like idea. It's something I hadn't thought of. There's other people figured out ways to use Substack. One of them, Christina God, figured out how to use Substack in conjunction with Medium and in conjunction with any other social media to create like a flywheel effect where they
mm,
all support each other. Super cool. Like there's just ideas in there, but all the ideas, there's too many to apply. You gotta focus. So
yeah.
choose one that you say, you know what? No, I'm going to focus on audience growth. In fact, it was Landon who helped me see this. He's like, it's really hard to focus on all these areas of business at once.
Mm,
And I was like, you're so right. He's like, people are focused on audience growth and they try to focus on, all these other areas. And he's like, you have to focus on audience growth and if that's where you want to focus, or if you're trying to focus on conversion, you got to focus there. Because especially if you're a solo
mm,
entrepreneur, you don't have a team that you can say focus on this, focus on that. You have to do all of it. It's easier to focus on just one. So
yeah.
choose one area and then go into the interviews just in that area. Do read the intro and conclusion because I think that will be helpful as well because I have some special insights to share in there. But that's what I would say. So as usual, I always answer more ideas than what I've asked for, I think. But
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. And yeah,
yeah.
I actually love the fact that you are telling people that they don't have to look at the entire thing. They can just look at specific aspects of it. Because normally, if someone's created a resource, they're like, look at the entire thing, go through it from cover to cover, like focus on everything that's in there. It's all really good. But I like that you're just being really honest about it and clear and just saying, look at what you need the most and focus on that. And that again comes down to that whole not trying to do everything at once as a solo creator. Just do what you need to do in the moment. And I'm really guilty of that. I'm always trying to do, I've got like multiple plates spinning on my fingers and trying to keep everything moving all the time. But I find whenever I focus on one thing in particular, that's whenever I take steps forward and things actually happen and I grow and I get better at what I'm doing. So brilliant advice, Rodney, in general today in the course of this conversation. It's been great. Obviously I will link to the Profitable Playbooks ebook in the show notes of this. People can grab it after this. And I'll send it out obviously as part of the post. And yeah, very exciting. Really, really cool stuff that you've done. I love what you're working on right now. I love all your advice about courses. It's also clear and actionable. And I think anyone who's listening to this today is going to go away with a lot of really good, solid advice that they can take forward as a writer and a creator. So I really appreciate that. Just as we finish up, I always ask people this question at the end of these podcast episodes. If you could leave people with one bit of advice today that they can take away, obviously you give them a lot of advice, but if you give them one particular golden nugget, about how to generate income from the writing, what would you say that would be?
Yeah, so this is probably gonna be different than what a lot of other people say, and it's kind of relates to what I've said already, but really the word is focus.
Mm,
There's I really got this idea. I mean, there's people who talk about it. All right, a lot of people talk about focus and how much you need that. But you will experience it in your life and in your business if you actually realize how important it is. There's literally a whole business process called theory of constraints, which is literally all about how do you identify that one problem so you can just focus on it. And when you read the case studies, you realize that all these people are coming up with ideas once they've decided this is the place to focus on.
mm,
All that creativity naturally emerges when your energy is in too many directions. And obviously, if you have a solo business, certain things you do have to pay attention to more than one thing, but you try to limit it as much as possible, or at least give yourself time periods where you're focused on one thing. You will notice the energy change and it will shift over.
mm,
And that's why it's good. And just, I'll give you everybody a real, if you want a technique, here's a technique. Write down every single thing, make a list. Every project you've got, every single thing on your mind, literally write it down. I learned this from, oh gosh, I wish I could remember this guy's name. He's Australian. List it all, every once in a while, list it all, like you get 100 things. And then you just decide which is of those things you're just going to focus on for a little while. Just
mm,
get everything out. Listing is such a low level exercise, right? It seems like it's nothing, but there's literally interesting case studies of just helping people list it out. It just gets it off your chest,
mm,
every single concern, and then choose amongst that. And a lot of that you'll realize, oh, I don't have to handle all those things now. In
mm,
my mind, I was thinking, oh, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do that. Good, put it on a someday list. But just you look at all that list and then you go, okay, especially nowadays, we were doing it with post-it notes, all right, which is so crazy. Now they think about it, but if you do it on a Word document or a Google Doc or something, put it in bullets, and now you can just copy and paste and move them around. Or some of them are really parts of other things. You can just organize that stuff, and you say, no, this is where I really need to focus.
mm,
And there's a question. Oh, this is what I wish I'd shared earlier. Here's the question: what's the one thing I can do now, such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary?
mm.
And I did not invent that question. That's from Jay Papasan in his book, The One Thing. If you find that useful, you might read the book. But take all that stuff out and then ask yourself that question, or you can ask yourself that question first before you make the list, whatever you want. Uh, but it really helps you focus, and it doesn't mean that you don't do all the other things, but it does mean you have to carve out time for the one thing every day, that one thing that's the biggest, going to make the biggest difference. And it's really hard. The world is not designed for our focus nowadays. Everything is designed to take your attention away. So if you struggle with it, I don't know about ADD and ADHD. I don't actually understand it. I might have it, maybe, I don't know. Um, um, but um, but what I do know is environments make a difference. So you literally, we are in an environment that is not given towards focus. If you're in a cabin by yourself, that's given towards focus. If you
Mm.
go on your laptop, I've literally go on my laptop and I immediately forgot why did I come here? Because I have these things,
I do that too.
there
Yeah.
to get my attention. So don't blame yourself if you struggle. It's not necessarily a personal flaw. As a human being, we were literally built to pay attention to certain types of things in our environment, and people who design software are literally using that psychology to get us to pay attention to their thing.
Mm,
So if you have to design stuff, because I've had someone say, "Am I broken that I need to do all these things to focus?" I say, "No, you are not broken. The system is designed to get you. The other people's systems is designed to grab your focus."
yeah.
Anyhow, when you create things, don't think it's because you're flawed. It's just because the things have been built that aren't necessarily working in your favor all the time. And so don't blame yourself, but work on it. In fact, if you're really scattered, then the number one thing is to figure out, how do I carve out focus?
Mm,
And even if it's 10 minutes, I helped somebody once who said, I don't know if I can do it. So just do 10 minutes a day and just report back, and then I'll tell you how awesome you're being by doing that. And then sure enough, by the end of the week, oh, I didn't just do 10 minutes. I got this number of hours done, right? 10 minutes
mm,
a day for 5 days will be less than an hour. No, they got 2 hours worth of work done. And congratulations on that one focused thing.
yeah.
And then the next week, a little bit more and a little bit more. Um, so that's what
Mm,
I would say. Focus, figure out the one thing, make a list, get it out of your head, figure out what's the one thing that would make the biggest difference, that the one thing that such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. Those types of questions that help with focus really do make you focused. And guess what? You're going to do this. You're going to say, this is amazing. Oh, Rodney, I love it. Then I ask you a month later, and you might say, oh, I forgot to keep doing it. That's right. You will forget unless you build up a system. Like
Mm,
I literally have calendar reminders to remind me to ask that question. I literally have people who I've told you should ask me that question. Because if you don't build it in, you will forget. I learned that idea for years, and then somebody reminded me of it, and I go, oh, how did I forget to keep asking that question? How did I forget these concepts? Well, your world is designed to keep making you think about other things. That's why. So,
yeah. It's a great way to bring this to a close. But yes, yeah, such good advice, Rodney, honestly. And I think anybody can relate to that. We're just in a world that's constantly filled with distractions all the time and trying to pull us in different directions away from what we should actually be doing. But I really appreciate this. It's a really great conversation. Really, really enjoyed it. Again, anyone's going to take a lot of stuff away from this today. So, if you've been listening, definitely go check out Rodney's publication and follow him on Substack and anywhere else he is, and check out his content, and his courses and his profitable playbook as well, and his atomic, what is it? Atomic course blueprint as well. So lots of great things to check out after this if you're listening to this today. And Rodney, thank you so much. And I'll connect with you again at Substack really soon. Looking forward to keeping this kind of conversation going in the future.
yes, yes, thank you. And you asked some really great questions too, David.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll see you soon, Rodney.